Um, so if you would like to have any questions answered, do interrupt me. Do feel free to interrupt me throughout the presentation. There should be a chat box in the bottom right-hand corner that you can ask me some questions. And I'll also leave some time at the end to go through any questions that you might have about how you can apply what we've been talking about to your own organisation or business or school. So in terms of who I am, my name's James Digby. I'm the Managing Director of Bright. We support a wide range of clients. All of them are purpose-driven, so a lot of schools. We work with a number of charities, an exam board, a range of different companies, but they all have one thing in common, which is they are purpose-driven to make the world a better place. So we do that through running marketing campaigns, both on the attraction of staff and attraction of customers. And we run about 5,000 of those campaigns a year. So a lot of what we're talking about today is based on that data, based on what we see happens when you apply an employer value proposition to yourself as an employer. So we'll start off by going through something really important, which is what is an employer value proposition, often called an EVP. The key elements of an EVP, how do you build a strong EVP? And then we'll talk through some of the common mistakes that people make. And in each of these different elements, we'll talk a little bit about why it's important to be applying these things to your organization or your business. So we've got some resources on EVPs. Do ask questions as we go along, but we're going to share a recording at the end of it. And if you, I apologize, if you're still going to have questions after the recording or the sessions that they're going to be sharing with you, do feel free to book in a free consultation. Very happy to talk you through how to apply what we're going through today to your organization. So an employer value proposition, which I'm going to call EVP, just to make life a little bit simpler going forward, is a unique set of benefits, values, and experiences that you as an employer can offer to your employees. So it really is there to define why people should work for you and not another organization that you might be competing with for talent. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that you're competing with in terms of your service or your offering, but definitely in terms of the fight for talent. It's trying to make you an employer of choice. And it's really important because it is a highly competitive market. It is highly competitive for particular roles as well. It does differ from role to role at the moment. And we are seeing that one month you might really struggle in a particular area, and then the next month you might be struggling in a completely different area. So an EVP does help to offset that a little bit. Employees really are looking for meaningful work. They're looking for areas that they can kind of grow their knowledge of and their skills of, and they want a very positive culture. An EVP helps you to define that culture. It helps you to define why your work is meaningful, and it helps to explain to people how you can help them to grow through working for you. So a strong EVP will enhance your employer branding, and it's going to be reducing your hiring costs because you won't be having to run recruitment campaigns multiple times to fill your position. We know that it varies, but typically you should see, if you get your EVP right, you should see a reduction in the number of times you have to repeat your campaign by about 60%. So if that's something you struggle with, an EVP can be the answer to that. In terms of the key elements of an EVP, they differ depending on the world that we live in, the situations that people are in. Sadly, at the moment, the one that is at the top is compensation and benefits. And interestingly, that isn't always the case. But with the cost of living being so high at the moment, a competitive salary, bonuses, pensions, and perks, they really, really are very important. Career development is consistently one of the top 3 options when we've done EVPs over the last 6 years. And that might involve training, mentorship, and progression opportunities. So getting that into your employer brand is really important. Your employer value proposition it's literally that. It's a proposition or a sales pitch to people. So it's great to be able to say that you're already invested in career development. But to sell that to somebody, you need to be backing that up in the way that you talk to candidates through your employer brand. That might be case studies. Case studies work really well. So Joe Bloggs came in to our organization in this position. 3 years later, they're now in this position, and they've progressed so quickly because we've invested in training or support or succession planning. Work environment and culture. People do look for a culture that is inclusive and diverse. But it's also important to get across how that culture feels. How does it manifest itself on a day-to-day basis? So, for example, if you're talking about being a very supportive culture, what does that mean? Does that mean that people are willing to stop you in the hall if they feel like you're struggling that day and offer their support? Are they willing to jump in and help you with your workload if they've got the capacity to do so? What does it mean in terms of the day-to-day life? And that's the same for all elements of the EVP. Break it down into what reality is rather than using high-level buzzwords like supportive culture or inclusive or the fact that you invest in progression and CPD. Work-life balance. It can be very difficult to provide work-life balance for a lot of people, but you can talk about any hybrid working opportunities that you have. You can be asking people if they've got any flexible working requests, but also you might be providing support around well-being. What does that look like? Is it an e-learning module? Is it that you've got mental health first aiders within the organization? What are you doing in reality so that on a day-to-day basis, if somebody's struggling with their well-being, they're struggling with their work-life balance, what can they come to you and talk to you about to actually fix it or make it better for them? And then finally, the fact that you're hopefully doing something good in the world needs to be brought into your sales pitch to candidates. So, are you particularly focused on being sustainable? Do you have great corporate responsibility? Are you working in a particularly ethical way? And again, provide examples of this. Lots of companies describe themselves as sustainable. What do you actually do to make sure that that is a reality? The thing that we see that is missed out of the majority of other companies that provide EVP support um, is the fact that relationships are always in the top of the results. Typically, they are the top of the results, but they're always in the top three. Um, and for us, it's a surprising thing that people don't talk more about relationships within their employer branding because you might be willing to take a sideways step. You might even be willing to take a slight step down in your job role if you felt like your relationship with your colleagues or maybe your manager wasn't great. We know that people want to be supported by the manager and they want to feel like the workload and the work balance is proportioned across their colleagues in a fair way. And we know that those things in the long term are exceptionally important. You might be able to attract somebody via a job advert with an amazing salary, amazing set of benefits, but it's very, very hard to retain people if you don't have that relationship piece. So I encourage everybody to kind of consider, how do relationships form? How do they sustain themselves within your organization or business so that people do feel that it's fair, so that they do feel they're supported by their manager and their colleagues. I talk a lot about EVPs and employer branding in these sessions, but also when we're doing this work. There is a lot of overlap between the two, but your EVP really is a promise made to employees or potential employees about what experience they're going to have. And then your employer branding is how that is positioned to people in your communication. So that might be job board profiles, it might be job adverts, and it might be in the way that you talk to people throughout the recruitment process, so that everything is consistent. But an EVP is a really strong foundation so that you can be guiding people through each of those stages. So when we're writing a job advert, this is how we talk about ourselves. When people come in for interview, this is how we talk about ourselves. When we're offering people, this is how we talk about ourselves. And then when people join us, this is the experience that they get, which needs to align with that sales positioning. Does anybody have any questions about that and how the two fit together? Perfect. So it's really an important element for attracting talent. But as I've just mentioned, there is this piece around retention and engagement. If you can attract people that share your values, share what you're trying to achieve, then you are going to perform better. I believe that the research has shown that it's about 15% better in that first year of getting your EVP right. So it's not something which I think is ever going to instantly transform the way that you recruit, but it is something that starts to pay dividends over time. I know that within the second year, typically the people that we work with see the biggest impact of their EVP. And my reasoning for that is that we know that people in general need to see marketing up to 15 times before they believe it, before it sticks, before they start to kind of connect with it. And that's typically because people are bombarded on a daily basis with marketing, with propositions, with sales pitches, whatever it might be. Um, a strong reputation allows you to be selecting the best candidates out there. It allows you to reduce the number of times that you have to recruit, but it also reduces the number of times that you need to go to a recruitment agency, and it increases the power of your job adverts and the power of your branding on different platforms. Um, and then because you're attracting people based on reality, you're not overselling your positions, you're not over underselling your positions. Your employees typically perform better. They've got a shared vision of what they're trying to achieve. They've got a shared vision of what culture they should be producing. Um, and this is a good point to kind of raise that you don't necessarily have to recruit for the culture you currently have. If you're trying to change that cultural shift by perhaps attracting people who are more open to change, this is a great way to do it. Build an employer value proposition based on the personas of the people out there that you want to have as a business or a school or an organization in the future. The one thing that I would say is be very, very open about where you are. If you want to attract lots of people who are really open to change, they're constantly kind of driven by the excitement to try new things, but your current culture isn't like that. Your EVP and your employer branding, that is the point where you need to be very open and truthful and say, this is what we're trying to achieve. We're not there yet. And very few people do that. The one sector I do see that's very good at it is technology. So have a look at some technology companies out there, and see how they position themselves, see what their proposition is, and see how truthful it is. If you want an example of what good looks like. Not all of them, but the vast majority of them have really perfected that side of things. So we talk a lot about diversity and inclusion in recruitment. I think on a day-to-day basis, it's such a hard thing to focus on. You're trying to fill the position with the best candidate. Diversity can mean such a spectrum of different things for different people. It's very easy to miss people out. It's very easy to add people in that you don't need to necessarily worry about. You might already be attracting those people. But for me, I think the simplest way of seeing it is diversity should be about diversity of thought. Because if you can attract people that think in a different way, come from a different background, you'll broaden the range of people that you can attract. So by talking about diversity of thought in your EVP, it's a great way to improve the wide range of people from different backgrounds that you'll attract. It's also important to state, because this is a sales pitch, if people are coming in and they've got a different way of approaching different things, and that's really important to you, how do you ensure that the current people that are there are open and willing to listen to their ideas and their thoughts? Um, so when you get this right, the employees that you currently have and the people that you start to build into that, um, they're going to stay with you longer. Um, you will reduce that turnover rate, which will reduce the amount of time that you need to spend on recruitment and the amount of money you need to spend on recruitment. Um, but when you have this mismatch between what your sales proposition is to working for you and your actual reality of working for you, you see that turnover starts to shoot up. People become disengaged because they feel it's a lie, they feel it's exaggerated, and actually it can have a negative impact. So building an employer value proposition does have its risks, and it is important to be very, very truthful with it. Once you build it, it's never necessarily completely finished off. It's always going to be a work in progress. Your values as an organization or business or school, they're going to be the same, but the areas that you focus on for different skill sets will change. Say, for example, it might be that if you recruit IT staff or an IT technician or an IT manager, the things that drive them, the things that they're looking for, are going to be very different in 2 years' time, or how it was 3 or 4 years ago, because technology moves on, people's motivations change, the economy changes, and so on and so forth. So, how do you actually build an EVP? So, you start off by conducting employee surveys, review your exit interview data, maybe run some focus groups, and identify your strengths and weaknesses within your current offering. Start to then define that. So, what is your company mission? What are your values? What are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? Why do you exist as an entity? And then start to craft the messaging that aligns between those two first stages. Once you've crafted that messaging, start to test it with existing employees. If you hand it to them and they laugh or they say that's not true or that's not reality, then you know that you're probably doing something wrong. If they feel like they've struggled in the past to describe what it's like to work within the organization, then and this is giving them the ability to do that, then you've hit the nail on the head and you're doing exceptionally well. So keep refining it until you're happy with it, until you're showing it to people that do work as employees and they are connecting with it, they're engaged with it, and they believe in it. Then come up with a plan to roll this out. Is really, really important that there's some internal communications here, but it's also really important that you weave it into that onboarding process because that often gets missed out. Often people will talk internally about why an EVP is important and they'll focus externally on the recruitment marketing element. But the bit that gets missed out is that middle bit when somebody's not quite a candidate and they're not quite an employee yet. So you want your recruitment marketing, your recruitment experience, your onboarding, and then that internal piece when they've actually joined, all to align with your same sales positioning and sales proposition. And then review it, continuously assess it, build into your yearly process, um, like your ability to assess your EVP, and continue to get feedback from your employees. So ask people when they join you, did what we sold to you become reality, or is there a gap between what we're saying to you in the recruitment process and the reality of working for us? Um, Unilever probably has significantly more money than the majority of people um, that you would find out there. I was going to say that we work with, but in general that you find out there. But they have done a very good job in attracting people in a very competitive market for fast-moving consumer goods, and they've done this by fixing things internally that they knew are important to people. So they've enhanced the way that they provide career development. They've looked at how they can prioritize in everything they do, flexible working and employee well-being. And then they have made commitments that are tangible in terms of sustainability. Um, for them, that then allows them to apply to a market that's very difficult to attract people, something that's very clear cut is backed up with evidence. They use videos, they use testimonials, and everybody talks about the same thing: career development, flexible working, employee well-being, and sustainability. So in 6 months' time, if you've been considering whether you're moving and you go back to their employer branding, you'll start to feel that you really understand what's important to them. And it's an area that's significantly improved. Not only their ability to recruit, but their employee engagement levels have significantly improved too. So you can't really do this without having senior leadership involved. It's important that, first of all, SLT understands the extent that this work plays a role in attracting new people. They understand the difficulties of recruitment, and it's really important that you have very open, transparent communications and feedback mechanisms. If you don't have that, you can build something which is completely overselling you as an employer, and it's very, very easy to do that. And then employees should be seeing the things that you're selling out to new candidates. They should be seeing that on a daily basis, which is a big thing to ask as an employer of an employer. Sorry. So once you've done that, probably a good 6 months worth of work there at least. Once you've done that, you need to start measuring the success of your EVP. So the people that you're hiring, because they'll be joining your organization and making up your employee workforce, measure their engagement and feedback, see how it starts to change, measure your turnover rates, and look at how people engage with you as a brand. Does it change on LinkedIn? Are your reviews changing on Glassdoor? And it's worth mentioning that Glassdoor and Indeed are the same business now. So Indeed and Glassdoor, are those reviews changing for your recruitment process and for what it's like to work for you? Um, for the recruitment metrics that you're getting, hopefully you've got the core ones there, like time to hire, number of times that you have to rerun a campaign. Make sure that those are changing and that they're going down. If you've got the wrong EVP, that's the first place that you're going to notice that things aren't improving or things aren't changing. Does anybody have any questions about any of those metrics and how to measure them? Perfect. So what could you do? What could you do wrong for an EVP? As we talked about, if you get that EVP wrong, you oversell to people, you make the wrong proposition. Um, don't be too generic. It's very easy to read 20 different job adverts, say for a school, and you hear the same things. We're invested in personal development. We are invested in improving behavior. The same things come up time and time again. Think about what genuinely makes you a unique organization or school or business. What makes you different to work for than anybody else? And it's really easy to say, this group of people is very happy and it's because X, Y, and Z. So therefore, we're going to base our EVP on that because we want lots of happy people. And therefore, you produce an EVP that really is over promising what it's like to work for you, because it might not be the reality for the vast majority of people when you're actually delivering that experience to your employees. I see number three, the vast majority of times that we do this work, you look through the data, you look through what your employees are saying about you, and you ignore the bits that are perhaps negative, or you ignore the bits that don't align with what you've got in your head, because you feel like there's been a change that's made that necessary. There's been a change that's changed the way people engage with us. Make sure that you're engaging with those employees. It's really, really important that you do that right from the beginning. We're working on an EVP project. This is what it's trying to achieve. Um, and then communicate it well. Get great copy. Don't use AI to write your copy because it tends to come out fairly generic. Um, and make sure that you're communicating it through the right channels. Use data to pick which channels you should be using different pieces of messaging. Are you looking at brand awareness? Are you looking at trying to generate candidates for a particular role? How can you develop a talent pool on LinkedIn? And these are all areas we can help with. So do let us know if you need any support in any of those areas. Um, Personalized EVPs are becoming um, more and more common for larger organizations. And you would expect the same for smaller organizations to be the truth, to be the goal for smaller organizations and medium-sized businesses, whatever it might be. But those smaller than, say, 500 employees, um, in the future, we can expect them to be producing personalized EVPs. That might be for a different school site, might be for a different office location in a different area. It might be for different demographics based on who you're looking to attract or where you're looking to attract people from in terms of transport or where you're looking to try and attract people in terms of a particular job role. So, are you struggling with a particular specialism? Are you struggling with a particular profession? Personalizing EVPs for those areas you struggle with, and then building on that is a great way to go about having very personalized content for people. Well-being is almost certainly going to become a bigger area. We know that people are under continued stress. We know that people are struggling in terms of work-life balance. So, including well-being in your EVP is going to be really, really important. Um, In terms of diversity and inclusion, I think it's going to continue to be a big topic. Sadly, a lot of people are focusing on other areas because it's necessary for them to focus on the very basics as recruitment's become harder. Um, but do make it a priority where you can, because it's always going to be important to get diversity of thought within your organization. And then in terms of technology, um, I think it's really important to consider how AI is going to impact recruitment for you. How's it going to impact your employee experience? And that's not necessarily always in a good way. So do have a think about what the positives and what are the negatives, and how are we going to build that so that we've got a very truthful EVP. So the key points are kind of covered today have been that it is really an essential part of recruitment, especially if you want to improve on where you were last year. And well-defined EVPs will align with your company or organization values, and importantly, your employees' expectations of what you are providing as an employer. It's important as well to not feel like you've done this and therefore that's it for another 5 years. Continuously assess, continuously adapt it so that it stays relevant to people. And then make sure that you're getting leadership on board and that your communication is is continuous, really, so that everybody is bought in from the beginning, but also throughout the entire process. Um, and then in terms of next steps, I think that I would be considering whether your organization has a strong EVP already. If you went and stopped somebody who had been part of your recruitment process, or an employee or a member of a senior leadership team, could they state why you're a great place to work? If not, it might indicate that you need to move fairly quickly. If so, it might mean that you just need to start kind of collating that in terms of messaging, and then clarifying it to people so that everybody's using the same types of wording. Um, and then conduct an internal audit by going to talk to people, maybe run a small um, questionnaire to a small subset of your employees, see what they feel like your employer value proposition is, see what they think about working for you, and then start to take some steps to improve in these areas. Small steps are a great way to see the impact of really clarifying what your proposition is. And if you have time, a full EVP project can really, really benefit you as an organization. We have plenty of time for questions. Does anybody have any questions at all about EVPs, about how to build them, about their benefits that I might be able to answer?